Yep. So good morning, everybody. We just finished. So just go get that. Woohoo! That was quick, easy. So I wanted to, though, but I feel like what's really important to talk about today is what we talked about on Friday.
Right.
So I'll backtrack so that everybody understands what we're talking about. So we started talking last week about opening up, which is funny. We're opening up those last levers of whatever's holding us back from this full flow into what's next, into, forward movement, or however you want to look at it. And boy, that just sort of came like a big, huge monster thing on Friday. And I'm like, oh, and it's funny. I heard myself saying things over the same kind of thing over and over. And we were talking, I don't know, months ago, even before we started recording this, when we were talking about the white elephant in the room, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like last fall, wasn't it? Back then, I think. I don't know. It was a while ago.
I think it was even before the retreat.
You think? So we went through a period of time, and it was like everybody, many of us collectively were going through this whole period of, I feel the white elephant in the room. Like, we know it's there. We can sense it, but we can't see it, smell it, hear it, touch it. Yet we know it's there. It was making us really sort of crazy for a little while, going, but yet I know it's there. And what do we do with it? Like, how do we realize it? How do we, and it's this whole
interact.
Yeah. It's like stepping into a new reality. We're creating it. We don't yet remember how to step into it, or what that means. And so we had focused on that a while back. And I'm pretty sure I probably typed up, somewhere on the practitioner page, the Trinity practitioner page, about, our discussion that week, because that was a really big thing for us to be able to sense it without having to see it. And we didn't even know what we were talking about back then. That was when we started with the remembering, was it creating beyond remembering kind of stuff? Yeah. So anyway, so I've been saying for weeks, I've been talking about, so like, we're going to put that on the shelf for a moment, because this is like all ties it together outside of space and time. For months, not months, for about a month, I guess, whatever. I read the book, finally, A Wrinkle in Time. The movie's coming out like the end of this week. And I'd heard about it by many people, many practitioners, many other spiritual people. They're like, oh my God, it's a kid's book, but it's got so much insight in it. And I finally sat down and read it, like in January, and it was awesome. And it was really what I loved, and it might spoil a little bit for people here, but this is important, is there's this one planet that this group of people go to, sort of as a stop, an in-between stop. And the girl makes this observation when she gets there: what a gray, dingy, dull planet. And she meets the beings who live there, and they have no eyes. And she's like, oh, she felt so sad for them because they had no eyes. And how do they function? And she's like, well, I guess they're not missing much, because this is a gray, dingy, dull planet. And the more she spent time with them, the more she stayed there, the more she realized the planet was built off of a completely different set of senses than the ones that we're dependent on here on Earth. Right? So that sight was like was really of no value on that planet at all, but all these other senses were. And so as she stayed there, she had to learn how to feel the richness of everything that was there, and sort of see it in the technicolor, so to speak, the way they experience it in that lushness and saturation. So the funny part was, after I read the book, I was talking to my daughter about it, who's read the book, and then, others. I'm like, the one thing I just don't understand is how they're going to be able to portray that in the movie, because the movie is so visual, right? So yes. I keep on saying that, and it's like I kept on talking about the planet, and I thought how cool that was, because it gave you a different perspective and whatever. So then it kept on coming up last week. I have so many, and Sarah and I talked about on our share last Monday about how so many of us are feeling this place of, I know everything's changed, but everything looks the same, and they're feeling this friction inside of them because they're like, well, I know I've changed, everything's changed, but it still looks the same. And so it's like, well, why am I still here? Why does this still look, like what it's always looked like? And then I'm saying this thing about this planet, and then it just hit me in a conversation on Friday. I was like, right, because we're still thinking from the earth level up instead of from the whole level into what we're, like creating, because we're still trying to make judgments based on what we have utilized in the past as relevant on earth in 3D, 3 and 4D, which is sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Touch in the physical 3D as we know it.
Same with the 3D sight.
Right. And we even do that, like, if you think about it, it's sort of very limiting the way we look at even spiritual abilities when we say, oh, clairsentient, clairaudient, clair whatever, because then we are saying, okay, so my divine abilities, I'm going to limit by connecting them with a very limited scope of perception from the 3D, right? And so when I tell people that knowing is far more advanced than any of those, and if you just know and depend on the knowing, it is so much more important to like just get the whole picture and not depend on how I'm getting it. Am I getting it? Because then we think, well, am I hearing it? And we get into that habit of, oh, I'm seeing this or I get that, which is why I'm always clear. Like I always make it a point to say, well, I understand this. Like I always try to say, like, I understand this to be, or something like that. So
we don't have the words to describe that level of just knowing.
No, and I've heard people in the spiritual world say, oh no, knowing is first and then the other abilities come later. I'm like, oh no, those abilities are very down to the earth level, like very down to 3D level. It's very limiting of us to try to think that, oh, well, that's really the more important thing. And so many people try to put themselves in the box and say, well, I'm just not clairaudient, I'm not clairvoyant, I'm not whatever. And it's like, but you're beyond that. So accept that and say, you know what? I skipped a step and said, I don't need to get all that crap because it's not like that's an egoic expectation.
Right, right.
So when we look at that, and if we step outside of that and say, and knowing is so simple because knowing comes from that wholeness.
Well, and it's almost like it's a full body experience versus just hearing something or just seeing something that still needs interpretation.
A full being experience, yeah, because it's even beyond the body.
Right.
And many of us are having so many experiences like in our dream state right now, which takes us out of the physical body in many respects and helps us to remember the non-physical. So we have a lot going on that we remember that's very vivid in the dream state. In other dimensions and timelines. And I had some really, really wild ones this weekend. So anyway, so out of this conversation, so then I called Sarah, and Sarah and I were talking on Friday, and it was like, well, here's the thing. It's like trying to, like, going back to the white elephant in the room. It's like trying to read, say, ancient Aramaic with English, with English guidelines. Like, you will never make the translation.
Right.
Because you're trying to take one box and fit it into another box, right? And they're not even on the same plane of existence. So really, the whole point was this whole new existence we know is here. And we know it's changed. And yet we've been trying to read Aramaic like it was English. And so and then getting frustrated as to why it doesn't seem any different.
And judging ourselves as failing.
Right. So it's like, okay, so now the key is for us to remember how to speak this new, different language of existence.
Well, speak it, interpret it, integrate it.
Integrate it and embody it.
Right. Because what I'm feeling just in this conversation is it makes guidance. It moves guidance to a whole new level.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
To such a holistic experience.
Well, and as a follow on to that, it makes creation a whole new level. Because with that level of guidance, you're into instant manifestation.
Right. Right. And not only here, but across everything. Right. Yeah. And so more and more lately, I've also had a lot of that perception of that the perception that, and I'm not sure if we talked about this on here or if it was something you and I talked about at another place, but I've talked about it with you, and a lot of others are getting the same perception of all the me's coming back together in wholeness.
Yeah. Right? I don't know if we talked about it on a recording.
Yeah. So remembering that wholeness and embodying that wholeness in every moment allows us to communicate through the entire multiverse. And in doing that, we can't limit ourselves to our limited way of communication. And, I should have like, not should have, but I mean, it's funny that I missed this, like, because it seems like things got put on fast forward last week. It was like, okay, come on. I'm giving myself the damn message over and over again. How am I not, it's like, how am I not getting this? Like, how am I not getting this? And I could feel it. And I just kept on getting one thing after the other, and we had the mice and the vultures and the this and the that. And it's like, the old does not, what is the message we kept on getting? The old is, it's time to put the old away. It's time to throw it out.
Yeah, the old doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't work anymore. It's not going to work anymore.
It's dead.
Yes. So, I mean, and we were getting it both of us getting it one way after the other, after the other, after the other. And then I'm like, okay, what do we do with this? And that's when this all came in. Well, it was interesting because also in the movie Arrival, which I'm going to ruin it for some people too, and I've been seeing the way that the beings communicate in the movie, the aliens, I just call them beings, which is more holistically, right. And see time as circular, and they see the whole picture in one moment versus linear like we do, which is the biggest challenge in the movie, us trying to learn how to communicate with each other, because we limit ourselves to this linear thinking. And these are beings that literally speak in a spherical way, so that you see the end and the beginning and everything in between all in this moment, right? So you're seeing the future and the past now, right? And that's where a lot of people are also getting spider messages, because that's what spider messages are all about, is the future and the past all come together in this moment, to spin that new reality.
That's interesting. I had 2 spider incidents all in the same day. I guess it was Thursday.
No, cool. Well, cool. Was it an incident? In what way? Did you get bit?
Oh, no. Just having them pop up unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And it was funny because the first one was Becca, and she's like, "Mom, I need you to manage this spider." We don't kill them; we just put them back outside.
Right? Yeah, that's what we do.
And I was like, that little thing, and I put it outside, and then the next thing I know, I'm doing something in the laundry room, and that same spider was like 10 times bigger. I was like, oh wow!
Didn't get that message the first time.
Like, ooh, look.
Next one's gonna be a tarantula.
No, I got the message. We don't need to get bigger.
So anyway, so this all connects because it's allowing ourselves to remember how to communicate this way. So then when Sarah and I were talking on Friday, you had said, well, what if we just set ourselves when we go to sleep? Because I keep on getting this message about learning another language, or like refreshing. No, it's refreshing myself in a language I already know, but I'm rusty in, right? And I've been getting that, and I was like, why? And I was thinking, why would I need to use that language very much? And and should I go back and really refresh myself? And it's like, no, it's almost like you can see your higher self going, oh my God.
Really?
How thick?
Out.
It's like, how thick can you be? And you gotta think, these are from conscious people. This is a conscious person, right? That's really like cognizant of this, and just thinking how many around us are getting so many messages like bam, bam, bam.
Right.
Which is probably adding to the chaos that many are feeling, right?
Right.
So anyway, so I kept on seeing that circular thing from that movie, and In fact, Arrival was on cable like a couple weeks ago, and of course I couldn't turn away from it because I love the movie. And for some reason, every time I watch that movie, I feel holistically better for some reason. Like I watch it and I'm like, yeah, it's almost like they get us, or whoever wrote this gets this, you know? So anyhow, so then it was like, yeah, okay, let's set ourselves to be able to remember how to speak this language or exist in this way, embody this language, or however you want to look at it. And I don't even think language is quite the right word for it. It's really existing in a completely different way while still physical.
Yeah, it's like a holistic communication because it incorporates all the emotions and the feelings and body language. It's a full package, not just verbal words.
Right. Yeah, because that becomes that knowing, right?
Yeah.
Whole being.
It's communicating and knowing.
Mm-hmm. It's beyond, I'm sorry, I missed that. It's beyond what in knowing?
It's communicating via knowing.
Yeah. But in like without this, the way we're used to doing it.
Right.
Which is why then, working on the Trinity website last week, I just kept on not feel like it was like, okay, this is much better. But upgrading all this text, but it still doesn't feel like it's hitting the point of where we are and where we're going. But I think it might take a couple steps because we're still remembering, baby steps.
Right.
So anyway, so after that conversation, I did set myself up for that over the weekend. Okay, so when I'm sleeping, let it be immersion language learning, right? Let me just go and do that. Well, I'll tell you what, my dreams have been freaking all over the place this weekend. And I remember bits and pieces, but they're so I feel so open and big and huge, like energetically. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, obviously it's working. I just remember one little bit of somebody showing me something last night and I'm going, oh, and it was almost like I was taking a test because I was like, no, that's not right because this only fits in this timeline or this particular situation and that's not relevant anymore. And it was like, oh, okay. So it was really really to see more of this holistic thing, just a little shadow as I'm waking up. I'm like, okay, let's remember this as I wake up every day now too and how to incorporate that. But I'll tell you what happened. Some of the stuff that came into me that were more big epiphanies over the weekend. So Saturday came and I woke up Saturday and I felt so weird. Like I had no word to explain what I felt like. And I was like, am I sick? Am I getting sick? It didn't feel like it. It felt just something completely like I had never felt before. And it felt uncomfortable because my body was like, I don't know what this is. Right. Right? So I was like, am I going to get sick? Am I going to pass out? Am I going to I was like, I don't know, and I ate something, I did my normal stuff. And then I sat and I was thinking, I'm just going to allow this, allow myself to embrace this, whatever it is. Right. Or allow it and embrace it, allow it. And I'm like, okay, so allow, assimilate, expand. I passed out, we go to Kung Fu on Saturday mornings. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I was just I went back to bed for 45 minutes and I lay there going, I'm not gonna be able to, I can't move my body. I don't know what's going on. And, but I'm allowing it, whatever it is. And then, when I woke up, I was laying there. My husband's like, are you going or what? And I was like, and something in me said go, even though it was the last thing I wanted to do.
Right.
And I was just I literally felt like I was dragging this 5,000 pound body out of bed to actually do something going, and I've got to do Kung Fu and I've got to do all this stuff. And it turned out to be we ended up only staying for 2 hours on Saturday, but it was one of the best workouts because we did a lot of stuff and we reviewed a lot of things. And it was almost it got me moving all different parts of my body constantly. It's almost like I had to reprogram my body to be able to move again. It was so weird. And I still felt really tired. You know, in the middle of that, I get my period, and then I'm like, but I don't get that kind of stuff. Like, so it wasn't like, that was really unusual. And it was almost like everything in my physical body had to sort of come into a moment to restructure itself, you know, without better words. And so, like, you know, the period, because that's part of, you know, my physicality, and this feeling of like WTF, right? And it continued on and off most of the weekend. And then I said, so then I was like, well, I woke up Sunday morning, and I was going early Sunday morning, and I'm going, is this really what I think it is? Or is it like, is it a cold or something too? Right. And I sort of heard this, or not heard, but I just knew it would be like, part of the answer was, well, it's all the same thing. Like, it's no different.
Right.
And then I remembered in the wee hours what we had talked about not too long ago about the virus,
right,
and how our DNA has part virus in it to help with the alteration of it.
right. Evolution,
right?
viral evolution.
And so, and that's part of what we created the virus for in the physical sense. And you know, it's sort of a doorway to allow us to shift. And then, of course, all this made sense. How many people are getting colds and flu and virus-like symptoms and all this kind of stuff? And it's like, right, because, and I was like, oh, duh. And we've been talking about how like physicality has been like part of this whole shifting, and people feeling sick and just writing it off is one thing, but it's part of this bigger picture. And I was like, oh, okay. So whatever version of what I needed to allow myself to shift this and allow my physical body to come along, that's what's manifesting. And it's really a little bit of everything, which is why I feel like I don't know like if I'm going to explode, if I'm going to feel good. So it's funny that once I came to that realization, I was still like really tired yesterday, like, but I never manifested any like cold. Like, I sort of felt like what I would feel like at the beginning of that, you know what I'm saying? Or
yeah.
Like, it was like out here, but it wasn't really in here. And last night I just went to sleep, and this morning, and I slept like the dead. And I just remember all these really vivid dreams. And I woke up and I was like, God, I feel fabulous this morning. So I'm wondering, and probably all the things that we're all manifesting, like what you and I were talking about before we got on the recording and everything else, they're getting so big.
Yeah.
Because they have to explode. Not only do they have to explode, but they have to come to this point of, taking a pin and popping the bubble because there's no more bubbles.
Yeah.
Right. So you're talking about the feeling of, I don't know if that was before or after we started the recording, that feeling of the darkness. Oh, the card. You said you pulled that card.
Oh, yeah. The Temple of the Black Obsidian. And walking into your shadow self to where it's no longer good girl, bad girl. It's just the girl. Or, as you said, the divine being.
Yeah. And this is huge.
Yeah. You know, and I'm tired of saying, well, it's because it's collective. Well, everything's collective at this point.
There's nothing that's not.
Like that level of separation is gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And so triggers are coming up for everybody left and right, because everything is right at the surface and all these bubbles are popping.
Well, and, you know, like we've always said before, no molecules are allowed that aren't in alignment. So it could be, you know, a half a molecule that's causing the problem.
Right. The princess and the pea thing again.
Right. That's just massive.
Yeah. Oh, there's God. Oh. And it changes. It's a ripple. It's a constant ripple effect.
I could just walk through in her work outfit. I always like to see what she has on. She has more clothes than Frank and I combined. And most of them I haven't seen before.
Funny. Well, she does work at a good clothes store. So.
I know. And she gets a really good discount.
Yeah. Yeah, I see her shadow and she walks by.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so that's why. And so like the challenge here is anybody watching this or listening to this or talking about it, it's important for us to shut the words down and feel into it, because the words, we just don't have them to.
The words almost hold it away.
Except if we allow the words to become holistic, right?
Right.
As we holistically listen, or not holistic, holographic. If we allowed the words to become holographic and echo through in their own ripple, right? But to be able to understand that is to be able to see it. So like in the movie Arrival, the beings teach the woman how to see as they see. And for a while she thought she was going crazy because she's like, well, what am I seeing? I don't know. Like, it's all over the place. This is so weird and it's so real. And how do I, like, you know, and then she starts questioning her reality. So that's where a lot of us are right now, is we're questioning our reality because we're seeing forwards and backwards and through dimensions and through timelines and questioning, or not questioning, but realizing that everything is just as real as anything else, and nothing is as real as everything else. You know, nothing is unreal as nothing. Everything is unreal as everything else, just as much as it's as real as everything else. So it's sort of like, it's forcing us then to take all of these partitions out, right, of delineation and boxes, and no, this is this, and this is this, and this is this, and saying, nope, it's all right on through the same thing.
Right.
And by the way, it's also a magic eye thing where you just have to sort of like learn and remember how to focus in the way that you can see the picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you see it, it's hard not to see it. That's the thing. It's like, once it comes in, you're like, oh, yeah.
It jumps out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, all right, I'm going to put us on pause because I'm going to. All right. So, you know, so on that, it's like, well, what? It really is all about immersing ourselves in whatever this new, old, or new planned, as we planned it, you know, embodiment, communication, whatever, however you want to put it, comes to the surface.
Right.
Comes to be.
Yeah, because, you know, I think allowing is the key, because we've already, I don't want to say we've brought it in because it was always here, but we've fostered the acceptance of the change, of the shift, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's so prevalent that now it's just a question of accepting it and allowing it and embracing it, which means the full embodiment of it.
Yep. And even if we don't know what's happening, you know, part of the message is to allow, to not be afraid, right? And so that's the part of what we've been doing so much in existing in acceptance and getting beyond fear, right? Because shit's going to start happening that we have no concept, right, of explaining, of verbalizing, of whatever. And really, it's all about allowing it, because it's like we're reforming an entire way of being.
Yeah. Right.
And it's not based on the old way of being. It's shifting completely into a new one. So.
And you can't sit and pick and choose and go, well, I'll allow that, but not that.
Right. Oh my God. Oh my God. You know, it just came to mind. Oh, here we go. Woo! This is a big one. Just like when we were in Lemuria, when we first started Lemuria, and we started the process of coming, what I call coming down, or increasing our density, increasing our separation.
Right.
Where we felt like it was, well, what we consider painful.
Right.
Because it was something we hadn't experienced before, like, because we hadn't created it that way before, right, or whatever. And it's almost like that's things like the reptilian stuff just have been like popping into my mind a lot.
Yeah.
And people bringing up the reptilian thing, and it's so funny because it's like, wow, I haven't talked about that in forever. But it's, who we have personified as the bad guys to hold on to the energy of what we agreed to do to separate into more density, right? And more separation. So I'm not saying that we're going further that way, but we're just doing something completely different now. And the thing for us to learn in that remembrance, number one, is to accept it, that it was perfect as it was, because we had planned it that way. To anchor in this level of reality, but also that as we shift, we've chosen to do so from this state into a very different state while we're embodied, right? So it might feel a little scary and uncomfortable.
Right.
Or a lot scary and uncomfortable.
Right.
If we allow fear to come in, because it's just it's unremembered, right?
Right.
It's yet unremembered. And if we allow ourselves to say, okay, I'm just going to immerse myself in that remembrance and knowing and trusting and accepting, the easier it will be. That feels huge.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like I hear ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. And at this point, I feel like my mind is so far out there that I can't remember these words. It's just, it's almost like it's a sensation. And it's like my mind wants to go back and repeat the words to make sure, I get everything and I, put it in a box so I can put it under my arm and carry it with me all day. And it's just not working.
Nope.
It's not working.
Nope. It's like the box has no bottom. So you try to put something in a box, it just falls right through and you're like.
Yeah. And then I sit there and judge myself and go, oh, my brain is just like a sieve.
Which, by the way, a lot of people I hear saying that lately. Oh, I'm just losing things. I can't remember stuff. I can't remember words. I blah, blah, blah. And it's just sort of like, right, but do you ever think it's unimportant?
Right. And I've found that, I've stopped judging that and just kind of laugh it off and go, yep, I'm out there.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it's really, it's interesting. Frank and I can go on the same walk, and whether we have our Fitbits or whether we have our iWatches or whatever, and we're walking together, and my steps are smaller than his because he's a foot taller than I am almost. So you would think if we walked the same distance that my steps would be higher. Not only are my steps notably less, my exercise registers probably half of what his does and all this kind of stuff. And I used to just get so frustrated. Now I'm like, well, that's because I'm only here half the time. So it's like it only registers half.
Only half of you is here doing that, right? Or whatever, too.
So it's like, it's still a 3D object and it can't.
It does not compute.
It can't find me when I'm not all here.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
And I think so.
That makes sense, but I do hear that a lot. Oh, there's the of people saying that lately about not being able to remember or getting confused really easily.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, well, it's us letting go of our anchor to the construct of the mind.
Yeah.
And feeling like that's got to be the anchor of our reality here.
And that limitation of it.
Yeah.
And it's like I've so gotten to where I you know, when, like, if I misplace something, I sit there and I want to start in the, like, well, was it this one? And then it's like something in my mind sees somebody grabbing the reins on a horse going, whoa, stop.
Yeah.
Stop thinking about it this way. Where do you want to find it?
Right.
And it's like reversing that whole, you know, rabbit hole you jump down, thinking that, you know, you're just a pawn in all this, when actually, no, just decide where you want to find it. Where is it sitting, and see yourself finding it.
Right. And have fun doing it too.
Yeah.
Whatever. Because that goes back to that whole like being tied down in the belief of the mundane as being the mundane. And
right.
Like I started setting myself, like I think I was saying to you Friday, it's like, I used to do this manually and I stopped. I just set it on auto and I forgot about it. And it just came back to me with this whole, like, you know, that reality shifting. It's like, well, you know what? I'm going to see the amazing magic in every moment and allow it to be synchronistic and serendipitous and see all that and enjoy it and have fun with it. And now I'm adding in, and I'm going to laugh and enjoy all the changes that make no sense to me. But continue to happen.
Wow.
So, yeah, so many little things over the weekend. They were just incredibly insightful. And at the same time, with the ego only observing, right? And as we talk about that in Trinity, as we talk about the repositioning the ego to be supportive and, you know, be the police and, you know, the unification of thought, word, and deed, you know, into unconditional love and unity, right? Then it starts to step back and be like, okay, well, I got nothing here. It's almost like, yeah, because when the ego's like, okay, yeah, I'm part of this, but I got nothing here because I just don't even know what I'm seeing, you know, like, and it's sort of like the almost putting the ego into a learning mode, into a whole different, you know, perspective.
Right.
Instead of judging, to observe and be like, huh, so how do I box this one up in a new way?
Right. Right.
So maybe that's what we focus on today with everyone is, you know, like allowing ourselves to do this and let ourselves flow into it and do that immersion and remembrance. Of like this whole new, I want to say new, because it is sort of new, evolved way of, yeah, transcending the old boxes of the 3D. And it's almost like throwing out all the old stuff because it doesn't work anymore, right? So throwing out all the old suppositions, throwing out the basis of anchoring being the physical senses and whatever, to say, okay, I'm going to allow this other stuff to be part of me. And I'm going to allow it to be easy and fun and
holistic.
Holistic and holographic. Like, yeah, like through the whole being. And I'm going to know how to utilize that. And embody that. So all of that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that feels so nice.
It really does. Yep. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's go. I started doing a little coughing fit at the end there. And it was funny because what I was seeing was this these particles, and they were all us, like they're all consciousness, right? But it was so funny because we were looking at I can't explain, it was almost like the particles encapsulated into a something, like there was a door that was shut. It was like encapsulated in a box, right? and we're like, well, but these particles don't belong here anymore, right? And it was just such a weird thing that I was saying. And I was like, so then let's just move them to where they're supposed to, to where they fit better. So we blew, and that's when I started coughing. So we just blew with it. Like it was almost like quantum physics, where the cell can disappear here and show up over here.
Right.
So that's what we were doing. And then it was almost like a repurposing of all of this stuff. And then it's funny because then I started to I'm like, where did that come from? Like trying to swallow down the cough. I took some water. I should put myself on mute. I'm like, wow, that was weird because I haven't coughed at all through all this. And it was like, huh. So it felt good, but it feels like that's just the beginning of so much. Yeah.
Right. I could have easily sat out there for probably the rest of the day.
I will have to put more time to that. Definitely this week. That's for sure.
Yeah. I kept seeing almost like something descending on me physically, but it was more from almost like particles, whether it's, like UV, that kind of thing, where it's like it's there, but you don't see it, all the way down to the cellular level and just working its way down. And it was almost like the lower it got in our bodies, the more work it had to do, the more shifting and the more changing and the more, it wasn't painful. It wasn't physical. It wasn't hard. It just was almost like a cleansing kind of thing. But you know what it reminded me of, and I don't even know if the movie's out. I don't even know the name of the movie. But it's about the invasion of the planet, where it just comes and gets in you cellular and transforms you.
Oh, I don't know.
It's got trying to remember the name of the girl. She was in V for Vendetta.
Natalie Portman?
Yes. I believe that it's her, and it's like they're trying to fight it, but it ends up, it's almost like a virus infecting you, but yet what it's doing is it's mutating you.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway.
So much makes sense when you connect all that together.
Yeah. This feels really good internally, just like.
It really does.
Free. It's like finally being comfortable with no rules.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm finding that comfort and then no desire to go back to the boxes that we used to have.
Yeah.
Which is probably where I don't want to call it we talked about that at Share at My House a couple weeks ago, right? The detachment and observation without any, looking at things going, okay, with no, okay, it's shifting the way it needs to shift.
Right.
No matter what that looks like on the 3D scale.
Right. And it's almost like I'm left with a sense of what things look like just isn't even worth your time to look at.
Right. Well, it's creating this, it's realizing that it's like going from color back to black and white, right? Watching a black and white movie after watching, say, ultra high def,
Right.
4K thing, right? That's what I'm gonna say. And then you go back to watch like a black and white movie. You're like, oh wow. And it's almost like it goes like from being really vivid to very flat.
Right.
So as we are more and more existing in this holographic sense again, right? And shifting into a new creation around it. That's why the 3D feels so flat.
Well, and it's nice to lose the distraction of having to think or look at how things look.
But another thing to look at too is what I'm getting to is saying, okay, so if you start feeling that, realize that even what presents here as like an old 3D or something function or task or whatever does have its web, right? Back to the spider thing, web spread into this new and different reality. Like there's something you don't see because you're looking at it with 3D eyes, but the more we can see it from that holistic perspective and accept it, the less it becomes, a chore and limiting, and we attach it. Then we stop approaching it from that flat 3D perspective and accepting it from that holographic one. Yeah.
Well, and we stop the judgment.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Always.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I know. It's almost exciting.
Well, it is really exciting. So I was like, yay, we broke through that wall of like confusion, right? Excited.
Yep.
We're excited. And then that's why those of us who are here now, because we're the ones that were here in the beginning in a different consciousness to separate out, and now we're back around, we're sort of coming back around to reforming to move it into something different. That's fun. Because apparently we have fun doing this.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you enjoy this week because we can't wait to see what next week brings. We'll see you next time. Bye.